Welcome to the channel and welcome to today's run through of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Let's jump straight into it. Firstly, give us your thoughts and feelings on the match yesterday. Get involved in the comments. Let me know how you felt. I'm not one to get too bent out of shape around pre-season games. I've seen us beat Real Madrid and Barcelona in pre-season, still lose the opening game of the Premier League. It doesn't really mean anything. It's about getting minutes in the legs of players and, you know, building up your fitness. I think the more pre-season goes on, hopefully we can start seeing some better performances, because I felt the first half was just very, very boring. Second half, a little bit mixed, bit better towards the end. I felt the new signings, though, Diego Leon, considering Diego Leon's, that was his first ever appearance for Manchester United, not even the reserves or a behind the closed doors game or anything. I actually thought he had a really good showing in the first half. I could see what he's all about. I thought Matheus Cunha was good as well first half. I was a little bit disappointed with Luke Shaw. Casemiro looked like he's running in treacle. He might be one that maybe has to build up his fitness, but the midfield is a big concern. We'll go through some of Ruben Amorim's quotes and comments on the midfield in a second. You know, I thought Cheeto did okay. Toby Collier was anonymous, but he's playing out of position. Ahmed did okay first half. Second half, I felt the team felt a little bit better, actually. I liked the back three from the second half. So Heaven, Maguire, Yoro, they would be my back three. Dorgu, I was impressed with as well. Lenny Yoro was outstanding. What a great young player he is. What a quality player Lenny Yoro is. I felt the midfield was more balanced with Mainu and Ugarte in the second half as well. We still have problems up front, and you know the problems still exist. But we haven't solved any of those issues overnight, and we do need personnel in certain areas. And it's still glaringly obvious that we need a midfielder. Still glaringly obvious we need a striker. Hopefully, Mbeumo can help provide a little bit more potency in attack as well. We still need a goalkeeper. So we're still a little bit off, and hopefully we can get some movements in the transfer windows on those areas. There's been some actually interesting updates today, which we'll run through in a second around the transfers. But firstly, give us your thoughts and feelings on the match below. Like I said, I'm not one that gets too bent out of shape around pre-season games, and it's the first pre-season game as well, so it's more about just building up fitness, not getting any injuries. But give us your shouts on that in the comments below. Let's go through some of the quotes. So interestingly, I picked up on this from Ubramu. He said, I felt the environment is really good. Of course, at times we're going to struggle, but what I feel from the first moment is that we are going to struggle, but we are going to struggle together. And that is the beginning of everything. And then we hope, and then we have to put the quality, because this club is not just about the effort. You have to win games. And I thought that was a good point from Amorim, and an interesting point that he made around the environment, because as we know, that's been one of the biggest issues at United is things behind the scenes, and the, you know, all the bits going on around like the player power and the attitude, and you know, all of this stuff behind the scenes. So interesting that Amorim did allude to the environment being better. And I've said before on previous match reactions when I did them at the start of last season, was that it feels like at times United were 11 strangers on the pitch, and it's the first time they'd ever met each other. And maybe he's alluding to something like that as well, because that's where it all comes from, getting a team that want to work together and fight together and stuff. And that's what I think he's referring to there. Interestingly, on Diego Leon, he said he came from Paraguay. It's his second week in Manchester. He's done well. He's powerful. He's learning. He would be a very good player. And I thought he had for his first ever appearance. I actually thought it was a decent showing from Leon in the first half as well. On Matheus Cunha, he said, we watched him last season in a different team, so we expect the same thing. You can see the connection between him and Bruno is still not there yet, but it's going to be a good connection. And I felt that as well. I thought Bruno was a little bit erratic at times again in midfield. He needs to calm down if he's going to be our midfielder, in my opinion. I don't like the dynamic of Bruno and Casemiro. I think it's going to be a problem if he goes with that this season, but you know, that's Ruben Amorim's job, and he'll live and die by his sword if he goes down that route. But on the midfield, Ruben Amorim said we had a lack of pace, especially in the middle of the park, but we created some chances. I think Matheus Cunha showed what we need, be really aggressive between the lines of the opponent. So interesting that Ruben Amorim himself picked up on the midfield being a possible issue. I agree as well. There was a specific lack of pace in there, especially with Casemiro. I don't agree with going with Bruno and Casemiro as our midfield, I think we'll be in trouble if he decides to go down that route, and Ruben Amorim will live and die by his sword if that's the case. But the fact he's pointing it out suggests to me that maybe he's smart enough to not go down that route. I think it'll be okay in certain games, but Premier League games, I just don't think that's the midfield partnership we should be looking at. Mark Ogden on the midfield, though, said that with the money they've saved in Rashford wages, they need to find a midfielder quickly. Without one, they will have the same problems as last season because they will be overrun, and I would tend to agree with Mark Ogden there. Interestingly, though, he said that the club are looking at people like Ederson for the midfield position. If I was United, I would be looking at Morgan Gibbs-White. We know he's available for £60 million. Whether they will do that or not, but they need a midfielder who can cover the ground, and I completely agree with Mark Ogden there as well. I do think we need a midfielder, we need a striker, we need a goalkeeper as well. Those areas have not been resolved, so we still need a strengthening in those areas. Morgan Gibbs-White would be a great shout, though, wouldn't he? If we could steal him from under the noses of Tottenham with that shenanigans that's happening between them and Forest. Whether we've got £60 million, we'd have to sell players first. But then if we want a striker, strikers are going to be expensive. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But a lot of as we know going forward, a lot of the transfers and stuff that we'll need in order to strengthen the team are going to be reliant on sales. Just go for the Rashford stuff. That leads me nicely into that. Now, at the time recorded yesterday's video, it was at halftime through the game. And a lot of the news and reports coming out around the loan from Rashford to Barcelona came out after the time I'd recorded, and it was already in the process of uploading. So I'm going to go through and clarify everything regarding that deal. So Barcelona set to pay whole Marcus Rashford's salary as part of proposed transfer from Manchester United. Impending loan plus option to buy includes 100% wage coverage by Barcelona as all parties work to finalise deal for 27-year-old attacker. So David Ornstein clarifying that Barcelona will pay 100% of Marcus Rashford's salary, which is brilliant, which is good. The option to buy, and with an option to buy at the end of it. Then we've had Mateo suggesting that Barcelona hold a £30 million option to buy, but there's been a bit conflicting stories around the price. Ben Jacobs, though, said that Marcus Rashford is taking a salary cut to join Barcelona. He will be paid around €9 million gross, including bonuses. The concession allows Barcelona to pay 100% of his wages. So fair play for Rashford. That was always the belief, though, is that he was, unlike another player that we're trying to move on, willing to take a pay cut to get an exit, and it looks like that's obviously been the case as well. But the main thing from our perspective is that we will not be paying Marcus Rashford for his loan deal, which in my opinion is good, gives us massive room in terms of a PSR. We just need to get the money in now. So the big one after this for me would be Garnacho's exit, because Garnacho is the one that's, hopefully we can get a decent fee for, and his homegrown profit, and that with the wiggle room now in PSR that Rashford's gone, I think could be big for us for the rest of this transfer window. But we just need to get a shift on and get some movement on that. We'll go through all the Garnacho and exit news in a second. But sticking with Rashford, Barcelona taking on Rashford's wage would reduce Manchester United's wage bill by £17 million, a boost for head coach Ruben Amorim as he looks to overhaul his squad. So that is a massive a chunk of money for us. Like, effectively, we're paying £16.3 million for Bryan Mbeumo. So effectively, by Rashford going, it's just paid for Mbeumo's salary, or in the first instalment of Mbeumo this summer, and then obviously next year, if we can get him off the books and get some money in for him as well, that's huge. So that does give us, like I said, the wiggle room from a PSR perspective. It's just we need the money in through the rest of the exits to proceed and hopefully get some more players in. But it does give us a lot of wiggle room. Marcus Rashford's potential transfer to Barcelona may include a penalty if the buy option isn't activated, similar to Sancho's Chelsea deal. So I don't mind them doing that in an option to buy. The issue I had with Sancho's was that was an obligation to buy with the termination clause in, but the reason they did that is because Sancho and Chelsea didn't agree personal terms before the obligation to buy, and that was why that clause had to be included, because it was done at the last minute, whereas this seems a little bit more, obviously they've been in talks for a while, Barcelona and Rashford and United, to get this deal done. So hopefully there is some sort of penalty where if they don't take up the option to buy, at least we'll make some money off of it, and then who knows what happens next summer. But yeah, hopefully he does well there and he can Barcelona will take up that option to buy him, but we'll have to wait and obviously see how he gets on there. Marcus Rashford is set to arrive in Barcelona soon, with a medical scheduled for Sunday or Monday and a presentation on Tuesday. That came from Barcelona's end. And then Chris Wheeler said that Marcus Rashford is close to completing a dream move to Barcelona on loan from Manchester United for the rest of the season. It's understood there is an agreement in principle for the deal to go through, which would see Barcelona pay all of Rashford's £315,000 a week wages and include an option to buy for around £40 million this summer. So that's interesting that Chris Wheeler is saying 40, Matteo saying 30. The details will come out in the wash as well. But overall, I'm actually cool with the deal. I think it's about as good as what we could get, considering the circumstances around Rashford and his wages and, his wanting to go to Barcelona and Barcelona being in a position where they knew that they could, in a position of strength with the negotiations, knowing full well that we want to remove Rashford and stuff. So actually, I'm cool with that, especially if they're paying all of his wages, because that's huge for us from PSR. We just need to get the money in now. We need to, and I think the players I mentioned that represents the most value for money for us is Garnacho. We can sell Garnacho plus all the other add-ons that we've had around, the sell-on clauses from the other players as well, could then give us at least some more budget to go on for the rest of the transfer window, because I still think we need, for me watching, I know it's only one game, but midfielder, goalkeeper, striker, three signings at least, I think, added to Mbeumo and Cunha as a minimum. I know some of you will maybe disagree with that and you'll have your own thoughts and feelings on that, but I would say that's the three areas going off of what we need for the rest of the transfer window. We just need the money to do that. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. Let's go through the transfer news. There's been some interesting developments regarding none other than Viktor Gyökeres. So let's clarify what's happened there. So firstly, this came from a Portuguese outlet that I don't know the credibility of, but they've got 1.1 million followers. So I was like, I'm going to assume they're actually fairly decent, saying that Manchester United are very close to an agreement with Sporting for Viktor Gyökeres, with numbers very close to those negotiated with Arsenal. The deal with Arsenal is increasingly in jeopardy. So that came from, like I said, what I'm going to assume is a fairly decent Portuguese outlet. Then we had a bowler saying a similar thing, that Ruben Amorim and Sporting on the verge of a deal for Viktor Gyökeres. Manchester United made a supersonic approach to Sporting and presented figures slightly above those negotiated with Arsenal, between 70 to 80 million euros. So I'm thinking, reading these reports, are United about to go and do what they did with Leny Yoro? If you cast your mind back to last year, the belief was Yoro was going to be going to Madrid. United made an aggressive move and made a bid probably over what the asking price was for Leny Yoro, in order to get a deal agreed between us and the club as a way for us to start approaching Leny Yoro to speak to him, so we could then convince him to come to United. And I'm thinking in my head, are we starting to do a thing like that with Gyokeres? We're going to agree a deal with Sporting so that Sporting give us permission to obviously speak to Gyokeres, and then we try to convince Gyokeres to come in. That wouldn't be beyond the realms of possible, but Record were also saying a similar thing, that Manchester United and Sporting close to agreement, but Gyokeres remains his position on Arsenal. He only wants them. Ruben Amorim's Red Devil are negotiating with the values demanded by Sporting, but United are not in the players' plan. So Record, again, another Portuguese outlet, saying that maybe we have made a move or done some sort of agreement with Sporting, but Gyokeres still would prefer to go to Arsenal. Then we had Sam C come out saying that Manchester United were, of course, interested in Viktor Gyokeres, but I'm not aware of any advanced negotiations as of today. Arsenal remain close to a deal for the player. Gyokeres is desperate to join Arsenal, and Sam C, I believe, is more credible than the previous reports. Ben Jacobs said Manchester United have not submitted any offers for Viktor Gyokeres and have no intention of doing so. Fabrizio Romano said the following: from many outlets in Portugal, they are reporting that Manchester United were working or have been working in recent days on a deal for Viktor Gyokeres, on a hijacked for Viktor Gyokeres. I'm not aware of an official bid for Manchester United. I'm not aware of club-to-club talks for Manchester United. I'm aware intermediaries trying to suggest that possibility via Sporting. So Romano coming out confirming that effectively what sounds like is happening, reading between the lines, is either intermediaries are trying to encourage United to make a bid because maybe that's what they were expecting. I think Romano was saying that, with Ekatike and maybe with Sporting, the belief was that United might start trying to go in and bid for these players because we'd made initial contact with them, but as of yet, we haven't bid, we haven't gone for Gyokeres, we haven't made a bid or an inquiry about Ekitike neither, even though Frankfurt were maybe expecting us to, especially after the Newcastle deal fell through. Obviously, he's going to Liverpool now by all accounts. But maybe a bit of media mischief as well by Sporting or Portuguese media, I think, putting it out there that United are close to doing a deal as probably a way to get Arsenal to pay a little bit more or pay the asking price or, do something with their negotiations. That's what it feels to me. But again, Romano, Ben Jacobs, Sam C, all saying no, complete nonsense. So we're not interested. We're not in any talks or any negotiations whatsoever with Viktor Gyökeres, as nice as that would be. And as much as in my mind when the initial stories came out, I was thinking, actually, are we going to start? Have we done that? Have we done a Lenny Yoro, as I mentioned? But evidently not. And Romano was saying the same as what Ben Jacobs was saying or Sam C was saying as well. He only wants to go to Arsenal, so even if a deal doesn't go through, I'm not entirely convinced that we would actually make a move for Gyökeres after that. So yeah, give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. Interestingly, though, Fabrizio Romano did say that Benjamin Sesko is one of the names being mentioned internally in recent weeks at Manchester United. So that's really interesting because a lot of the reports around Sesko recently have felt a little bit one-sided, where maybe Sesko's camp or agent or maybe RB Leipzig are putting Sesko's name to Man United to try and generate interest, to try and, get his price up. Things like that as well. But according to Romano, no, he is one of the names being mentioned internally in recent weeks. And we do know that Benjamin Sesko is a player that is very liked at the club and has been for a number of years. We've got the Vivell connection there as well, even though I think we've actually been interested in Sesko before that. So that's maybe one to keep an eye on. But Sesko's going to be probably the most expensive option out there for the striker. And I'm not entirely convinced we've got the funds or the budget to go for like Sesko and then get a midfielder and a goalkeeper, but not our job to worry about the finances and how we fund these deals. That's why we've got so-called experts in now in order to do that. So let them do their jobs. I don't really care is where we get the money from. It's not, I said, not our job to worry about that, but I think he would be the more expensive of the striker options out there. And probably the most riskiest, in my opinion, as well, just purely based on his age. And, big money for a striker from the Bundesliga doesn't fill me with much confidence and that's only because of our history with doing that, where we paid big money for young strikers big money for young players from the Bundesliga hasn't exactly gone well for us in the past. But, we'll pay attention to it. If Romano's saying he's on the list, then he's on the list. Now, another player that's on the list is Nicolas Jackson. So Manchester United have held talks with Nicolas Jackson's representatives, Al Barrett, over a potential move. A lot needs to happen in terms of outgoings for United, but one that could happen in the right circumstances. Worth noting, Chelsea have long-term interest in Garnacho. Now, that came from a BBC reporter who's actually fairly decent as well, suggesting that United have held talks with Nicolas Jackson's agents about a potential move, but we obviously need to get the money in first in order to do that. Is there a pathway for Garnacho to go to Chelsea and we get Nicolas Jackson maybe with some money? I would like to see that. Like us get some money, not like to see that deal. But I'd like to see if we're going to sell Garnacho to Chelsea, a player with some cash, maybe wouldn't be the worst idea in the world as well. There's talk or rumours about something with maybe Aston Villa. I'd rather do a swap with, Garnacho, some money and Ollie Watkins personally, and then Villa go for Jackson. That would be my preferred way. But again, I'm just a dude with a microphone, so I have no say whatsoever in what United transfer dealings are. And if it's Jackson we go for, then it's Jackson that we go for. But keep an eye on Chelsea and Garnacho, because there's no smoke without fire regarding that situation. Romano also said Chelsea continue to admire Alejandro Garnacho, so that could be one to pay attention to as well. Now, obviously, we've mentioned the striker, the other position we're looking to strengthen. Romano said this as well today. Striker and goalkeeper, we're waiting to make some moves, but they do seem to be like maybe the next two areas, striker, goalkeeper, and then hopefully midfielder, but that might be later on in the transfer window. And there's been a couple of updates regarding targets there. So firstly, from South American reports saying that John Victor is Manchester United's top goalkeeper target and talks are ongoing with his entourage. United should formalise an offer for Botafogo in the coming days. John's $5.9 million release clause must be paid up front to avoid negotiations. So I would say that John Victor is one goalkeeper that we are heavily linked with. I would say Victor Martinez, although the Martinez one feels a little bit more one-sided and would be the most expensive option as well. And then the other ones is Lamenns, and Romano has said that Manchester United made initial contact to be informed on deal conditions for 23-year-old goalkeeper Lamenns. Royal Antwerp goalkeeper among main names on Manchester United's list if they decide to go for a new goalkeeper this summer. I like the idea of going for Lamenns. I think he looks a really, really good young goalkeeper. I think could potentially be at the club for a long time as well. And to be fair, you know, the only one I had ever concern with the goalkeeper is Martinez, because I don't think he's a massive upgrade on Onana. I think he is a slight upgrade, but I think Lamenns would definitely give Onana a run for his money. And I think John Victor would as well. And John Victor would be cheaper than between him and Lamenns as well. But you've got to think he's a lot older as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the goalkeeper situations. But two interesting names. I think Lamenns and John Victor would be I'd be happy with either, to be fair. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. And then the latest on Bryan Mbeumo is that Bryan Mbeumo has completed the second phase of his medical at Manchester United today. He is now set to arrive at Carrington for media duties and officially sign a contract running until June 2030 and an option to extend until June 2031. That came from Romano this morning, actually, but now Romano has said he's officially signed his contract. We're just waiting for the official announcements and the interview and everything like that regarding the situation. Sully Talk said that Bryan Mbeumo successfully completed his Manchester United medical test as well as signing his official contract today at Carrington. Him and his family visited Old Trafford yesterday, set to be squad for USA Tour club statement soon. And then Sully Talks also said, for those interested, that Bryan Mbeumo is set to have the number 19 shirt number for Manchester United, same as in Brentford. As reported, Mbeumo has successfully passed his medical test and signed his official contract. Saga over. And there's a photo online of him. I don't know if it's his dad or his agent. Looks very, very dapper in his suit. Bryan Mbeumo with the United badge behind him and stuff as well. So we're starting to get to that point where we're seeing leaks around, you know, the photos and the contract signing and stuff like that as well. So that's positive that all looks like it's all but done, apart from the official announcement and just ironing out the creases, I imagine, regarding to that. I'm just going to double check because my phone has been lighting up like a Christmas tree while I've been recording as well. So Manchester United's key focus area for the summer transfer window is securing a striker and a goalkeeper, waiting updates on their next moves following the medical and Mbeumo announcement. That's what I just mentioned that with Romano. But yeah, give us your thoughts and feelings on all of that in the comments below. Give us your thoughts. I'd be really interested to read those later on. That's you all up to date with the latest news and transfer updates. Smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. See you in the next one.